Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to hear about our work on tags, borders, and catalogs, social reworking of genre on LibraryThing. Our paper explores literary genres. What is genre and who decides what it is, how it's organized, and what it includes? We already know how literary critics and publishers think about genre, but what about ordinary readers, and in particular, people in online reading communities? What non-traditional genres exist? For example, is vampires a genre, and how does it relate to other genres? And finally, how are online genres related to offline organization of books in shops and libraries? Many readers understand genre as a way of classifying literary works based on shared textual characteristics. By this logic, if a novel takes place in outer space, then it might be classified as sci-fi. Literary scholars, on the other hand, often resist understanding genre as a neat classification system. Perhaps genre is not something that books have or something that can be found in the text themselves. Within NLP and digital humanities, research has focused on learning fixed genre categories from texts, most focusing on book-length texts. While we are similarly focused on genre definition, similarities, and boundaries, we focus on user reviews and tags. Our goal is not to predict the correct genre label, but to learn from users about how genres are understood and used in an online community. We focus on one large online reading community, LibraryThing. LibraryThing is very similar to Goodreads. LibraryThing is smaller, but its data is more accessible to users and researchers. And unlike Goodreads, LibraryThing has maintained its independence from Amazon, and for revenue, it sells a catalog to libraries and bookstores. This catalog is based on the sets of free text tags applied by LibraryThing users. So there's a non-zero chance your own local library or bookstore is cataloging books based on the text entered by LibraryThing users. To give you a sense of LibraryThing as a website, I'm showing here a screenshot of its Zeitgeist webpage. This page, linked at the top of every LibraryThing page, contains an encyclopedic entry of all the books, authors, libraries, and users on the site. There's a lot of data on LibraryThing, and this data is celebrated, transparent, accessible, and part of the source of its cataloging income. Tags on LibraryThing are free text, allowing for creativity. They can be personal, like my favorites, or they can be communal, like best books ever. They often resemble genres or subject labels like fantasy, history, or animals. Prior work has referred to this kind of tagging system as a folksonomy. The tags are unconstrained and are applied by users and communities. Each book has its own tag cloud made up of all the tags that have been applied by users to that book. For example, these are the top tags for Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. You can see both tag text and the number of times that tag has been applied to this book. Each user also has a tag cloud of all the tags they've applied. In addition to tags, users can write and share book reviews. For example, here's a review of Flowers for Algernon by user Lily Wren. This review contains a multitude of themes, which I've bolded, as well as a discussion of genre norms and how this book fits or doesn't fit into the science fiction category. This review highlights that each user has their personal experience reading a book and that they often have some explicit or implicit idea of how genre is affecting their review. To answer our questions, we gathered a data set containing all the reviews for the top 1,000 books for each of 20 tags. We take a liberal view of genre and select the 20 most popular tags that are not meta or personal tags or near duplicates. When collecting the data for these different tags, we balance our collection by a number of facets. And after the sampling, we have 300 books per genre tag. Our final data set includes 17,000 books, 300,000 reviews, and 33,000 users. We allow books to belong to multiple tags, so that's why the numbers are uneven. Book reviews and reading habits can be sensitive information in some contexts, but at the same time, we could think of these online reviewers as amateur critics who need to be credited. In light of these tensions, we individually contact all reviewers whom we directly quote in our slides or papers, and we ask about their quotation and attribution preferences. Most of the people we message responded, even if their review is many years old, and asked to be quoted by name or username, which I think this goes to show how much pride and ownership these reviewers take in their work. To get oriented, here are 6 examples of our target tags. We can see already that there are differences in how reviewers write about different genres. Some genres like politics receive much longer reviews on average. And we can also check the interpretability of the tags using the top books and related tags by PMI using their tagged books. Among this set of 20 popular tags, we can also see some non-traditional genres like vampires. This wildly popular tag is probably not surprising to those who spend time in online reading communities, but it might be unexpected to literary scholars. We experiment with a series of metrics, each of which highlights different relationships between the genres, books, and users. These tests are useful not just to find patterns, but also to find outliers and unexpected reviewing language. Specifically, we compare the overlap of books and users between genre pairs, how distinctive the review texts are for each genre, and how similar the tagging habits are for each genre's reviewers. We begin our mapping experiments by comparing book and user overlap for each genre. A book can belong to multiple genres, and a user can tag books across many genres as they want. For example, as we'll see in the next slide, the graphic novel and classic genres have very little book overlap, but despite that, many users who tag classics also tag graphic novels. Here I'm showing a figure where we compare book and user overlap for each pair of genres. The x-axis shows the user overlap, while the y-axis shows the book overlap. As expected, these two features are correlated. If two genres share many books, they're also likely to share many users. However, we find some interesting outliers. For example, humor and picture book and fantasy and picture book have relatively high book overlap, but relatively low user overlap. Perhaps picture book readers read more frequently in other genres and only occasionally tag a picture book, for example, when they give the book as a gift. Other gaps help to reveal meaningful connections between genres and identify sub-communities. For example, memoir and crime have relatively few books in common, but they share many users. The low book overlap seems to indicate that users draw a clear distinction between the two genres, but the genres share many reviewers, cluing us into reader interests that span different genres. Now let's go back to the review text. You can try to guess which genre do most users assign to this book if all we can see is this one review text. And you might think historical fiction, which is what a classifier that we trained thought, but the book is actually most often assigned to romance. In this particular case, the reviewer told us she had a history degree and comes from a family of academics, so she wasn't surprised by this misclassification. But beyond particular stories like these, misclassifications can also reveal larger patterns about similarities and blurred boundaries between genres. Here we use the text of the reviews to map the genres. We train a simple logistic regression classifier on the text of the reviews for each genre. And our goal is not to maximize predictive performance, but rather to computationally represent ambiguity and similarity between genres. This figure shows the relationship between misclassification counts and book overlap for each pair of genres. As expected, we find a correlation between misclassifications and book overlap. But we can also identify pairs with unusually high or low numbers of misclassifications given their similarity. For example, romance and horror have an unusually low number of misclassifications given their high book overlap. While animals and psychology have an unusually high number of misclassifications given that they share no books in common. Often the classifier's mistakes indicate similarities and overlaps between genres, but on other occasions, the classifier's mistakes can indicate a mismatch between the reviewer's priorities and the typical priorities for that genre, which we explore in a topic modeling analysis in the paper. Finally, we use the reviewer's reading habits to perform a final mapping of the genres. We use the personal tag cloud associated with each user that represents all the tags they've assigned to books. We filter the tags that occur in fewer than 20 tag clouds, and we find the cosine similarity between each pair of user tag vectors. This tagging similarity could be interpreted as a similarity in reading habits, and we then compare the averages of these similarities across the genres. Here I show the genres mapped by review surprisal and reviewer homogeneity. Surprisal relies on a review classifier, where surprisal is 1 minus the prediction probability of the true genre. The x-axis shows the reviewer homogeneity, how similar are the tagging habits of the reviewers for that tag. And we might expect that genres with high lexical surprisal are written by reviewers with dissimilar tagging habits. And indeed, in this figure, we find that some genres like classics and children fit this pattern. However, we don't find a significant correlation between reviewer homogeneity and review surprisal. Unexpectedly, other genres like picture book are easy to classify using the review text, but their reviewers have differing tagging habits. The language used in these reviews is distinctive, but the set of reviewers is not. Other genres like young adult and fantasy have high reviewer homogeneity scores, but also high surprisal scores. Their reviewers have similar tagging or reading habits, but the reviews are more difficult to classify. They're lexically less distinct. I've shown 3 different ways of mapping genres on LibraryThing using the tags and review text. These highlight misclassifications, blurred lines, and surprising affinities. More results and details are given in the paper. There are many parallels between our work and recent digital humanities studies of genre. For example, our use of classification to measure an aspect of literary style is similar to studies by Underwood, and our attempt to map genres are similar to book clusters in studies by Wilkins. Our approach is founded in this tradition, which often uses computational tools in a non-normative way to explore ambiguity and to find outliers and misclassifications rather than to make accurate predictions. We also find that free-form tagging gives individuals creative license to diverge from traditional catalogs while still collaborating without consensus to create a catalog of their own. Compared, for example, to another popular crowdsourced website, Wikipedia, whose philosophy is much more structured and hierarchical, we find that frequent misclassifications based on review text show that boundaries are difficult to draw between many of the genres. Our study of book and user overlap bolsters this view, as even seemingly unlikely pairs of genres sometimes share significant numbers of books and users. Finally, again, LibraryThing is not just a virtual meeting place for book lovers, it also provides a catalog to physical lending libraries around the world. The process of genre assignment relies to a large extent on tags provided by users on LibraryThing, meaning that the non-conventional genres of LibraryThing are shaping how today's library patrons, like you, discover books. New non-prestigious genres are shaping our libraries, and patrons will be able to find books categorized by, for example, vampires enthusiasts on LibraryThing. Thank you so much for listening, and you can read more about this study in our paper.